And welcome to How to Work with Investors, specifically multifamily investors, because that is what I believe is the biggest way to create wealth in our real estate industry. From an investment standpoint, tax benefits are great, long-term hold and appreciation are great. And the way that I want to teach with you guys, and actually we just go right through the agenda. This is what we're going to cover today: why we want to work with investors and which ones. Some foundational setup tools, techniques on how best to work with investors once you're sort of committed to that model, and then how to value deals and key concepts and terms, which is where we'll spend the bulk of our time. But I think I would definitely want you guys to be comfortable and understand why we are doing this and why it's a good idea for you to add this pillar to your business. How many of you, now I can't see you, but how many people, just speak out loud? I know you're on mute now, but unmute yourselves. How many of you are actually working with investors right now?
I am.
Awesome, good. And are you working with multifamily investors or flippers or a combination of both?
One flipper, one multifamily.
All right, cool.
Yeah, I have one flipper, no multifamily yet.
Awesome. All right. So, well, I'm going to go into why I think I want to work more with multifamily and sort of. Can I actually go on mute? There's a little echo when I'm speaking. Thank you. Cool. All right. So let's go into why we want to work with investors and which ones. So one of the key reasons why we want to work with investors is that they buy all year round, right? And so it normalizes the sales cycle. So when a lot of people are really focused on the spring market and their first quarter or fourth quarter might be a little bit lighter than the other ones, this can fix that, right? You can have people buying consistently in the fourth quarter and in the first quarter. In fact, historically, with our team, the Guillermo Salas team, frustratingly, the other way, our first and fourth quarter sometimes are stronger than our second and third quarter. So it's really nice to just have not those vicious cycles, the ups and downs. And it's a big reason why you want to work with investors. The other reason, bullet point number 2, is increase the sales from existing relationships. So it can be a little bit exhausting to just continue to add to the funnel with people who are unknown. And what I love is our business model has been for many, many years is help the people that we love, our friends, our families, our loved ones, the people who want to see us be successful, help them buy their dream home, but then also teach them how to be a passive investor, to build a real estate portfolio that'll fund their lives, right? And allow them to do the things that they want to do in their lives. And so rather than having a person who buys every 5 to 7 years, you now have a person who you enjoy working with anyway, right? That's buying maybe 1 or 2 properties every single year, right? And so it's just another way to just normalize your sales cycles and increase your sales without having to go out to, 8,000 different people. And then point number 3 is, you're from just a strict enjoyment standpoint, you're just helping people achieve their dreams of financial freedom, right? A lot of people, when I talk to people, when we were helping them sell their primary homes or buy their dream home, you sort of keep your ear out for certain things, like maybe they're not happy in their job, right? And they're only doing that because that's the only thing they can do to pay the bills, or the only thing they thought of to pay the bills. Other things are like, they got to fund their kids' education and they're struggling, worrying about that, or they're thinking about retirement at some point, right? It could be even far in the future, but you've got to set the seeds, sow the seeds now in order to have that ready for you when you're ready to retire. And so it's just from an enjoyment standpoint, you're helping people achieve their dreams, which is just super, super rewarding. And it does, and I do have a bias for multifamily, and I do have a bias for helping people initially buy turnkey investments, because the flips, again, if you don't know what you're doing, there's a lot of room for error there, right? Not to say they can't be done, because a lot of people do it and a lot of people do it successfully, but we're just talking probabilities here, right? There's a lot of tuition, I call it for lack of a better term. You pay for mistakes and you learn from those mistakes. Well, those mistakes can be threatening more, or could be larger in the context of a flip or development for sure. And what you want to do is get them feeling good about the investment, have them build on that first one, second one, and then eventually grow into things that they're doing maybe more rehab, initially maybe cosmetic stuff, right? And then wholesale rehabs down the road for buy and hold. But definitely I have a bias there because you want them to be successful early on and not be like, "Ooh, this was just a horrible experience. I never want to do this again." Like, no, let's just serve it up easy for them. Nice turnkey multifamily that will make money for them. They can draw out of those reserves and build up another kitty to buy the next one. And especially with people who are new in the business, it builds loyalty, right? If you are acting as not a realtor, but as their financial advisor in their real estate space, then they're going to want to work with you over and over again. And I can tell you that from real experience. There are people who will not buy a property without running it by me. No matter how many times I try to transition them over to one of our other team agents, they want to talk to me because I've built that trust with them. And that's the type of relationship you want, because that's going to insulate you from, those lead aggregators out there, the OpCities and the Zillows who are trying to interfere with our relationship with our clients, right? So super, super important why we want to work with investors. So foundational setup. So once we make that mental decision, like, hey, we want to add this as something we want to do in our business, then there are certain things, practice points that I encourage you all to set that up front. So like, it's slow down to speed up. Put certain things in place so that it'll allow you to move much more efficiently and then be able to service your clients and be able to broadcast your marketing in a much more effective way. So the first piece is whatever CRM you have, and KB Core is an awesome one. I got to tell you, here at AXP, I switched from a CRM that I had for many, many years into KB Core. It's a good one. If you haven't been using it or don't have one, definitely there's a bunch of classes on how to use it. We can talk. I can tell you how that transition went for me. But set up your CRM with investor tags. It allows you to mass market, right? So you can pull send who do I email this out to? Who do I call? Who do I send it to on social media? If you have your CRM set up with investor tags, you're going to see our system where you're going to pull that information, package it in a way that's digestible for the client, and allow you to mass market it much more effectively. So that's one of the key practice points. Number 2, set up your hot sheets. I don't even know if they call them hot sheets anymore, but that's what I call them right, in MLS. And that's basically whatever your geographic region is or wherever you want to market focus on investments. Set up multifamily hot sheets so that anything that hits MLS as brand new or coming soon, or maybe there's a substantial price drop, you got it right in your inbox. And what I would do is every Monday, I would go through that and I'll show you the spreadsheet that I use, analyze the businesses, and analyze the opportunities, the multifamily properties that came out, and put it through that valuation system. And then I had a system. I would have that. I have the MLS sheet for the property. I would do my pro forma spreadsheet that shows the rate of return on it. I would have the next thing, Rent-A-Meter. So if you're not familiar with Rent-A-Meter, it's what it is. Just Google it, Rent-A-Meter. And there's a free version. I suggest maybe start there just to get comfortable with it. But there is a pro version, basic, and a pro version standard. And I don't remember exactly the terms, but I have the prices there: $79 per year for the basics, $199 standard for the year. That's the one I do. If you're going to do this at a high level, I suggest you do that. And again, I don't have a horse and race. I don't get referrals for any of this. I just know that it works. It's much more efficient to then you plug in the address of the property that you're interested in, the number of beds and baths, and it runs a report for you, pulls all the closed rentals in that area, and puts in an incredible, nice professional report that you can then send off to your client. That saves a lot more time than sort of going into Bright MLS and sort of trying to work through the circumference and how far it is and which block it. Like, this is just a great, much more efficient way. I think eventually you go back to the MLS sheet and get granular and make sure that you understand the details a little bit better, because Rent-A-Meter can go a little bit broad, but it's a great way for marketing initially and get some interest. And then you create a template or email or flyer that's going to just package this all together, right? And so here's a couple examples of what I'm talking about. Here's the Rent-A-Meter, right? That's what it looks like. That's the type of report that you'll get. You'll get some breakdown, average, midpoint, median prices, public record data. Shows you a map. It shows you how far these properties are from the subject property. And then just put something together like this. It doesn't have to be fancy. This is like an old one. We're redoing this, but this was the key part is here. Potential cash on cash return of 17.3%. So that's what I want you guys to think about, is like, hey, that's the lead grab. You don't even need to do anything fancy like this. All you have to do is put an email like, hey, who wants to invest in a property that's going to give you a return of 17% per annum, right? And if you put in the MLS sheet of the property and you put in the rent meter and you've done the work for them, the pro forma that shows the return, which I'll walk you through shortly, then you're just going to have the phone ringing, right? Because who doesn't? Who wants to put their money in a bank account that's getting 0.001% versus 17%? This is literally how I built my sales business initially. For some of you who don't know, this is my second career. I was a lawyer first. And what I knew was lawyers get bonuses in January. And at the time, it was ING was offering what was huge rate of return. I think it was 0.005, right? And be like, wow, we got to do that, or 1 point, whatever it was. And I'm like, forget that. I can show you something. And I was really early in on the Temple University stuff. I was showing them stuff that was 30% cash on cash return. And so build a big client base just doing that. Now, the cash flow is not everything. I'm going to get into a little bit about that in a second. But the whole point is set up your systems, set up your foundational systems in place so that you can take the information that you gather and broadcast it very effectively. Now, how best to work with investor clients? You got to speak their language, right? They're going to sniff out the amateurs. They're coming to you for advice, right? This is a big investment that they want to do. They want to get a return. They probably have something really emotional drawing them to want to invest in real estate. Freedom of financial freedom, time freedom, location freedom, just being able to spend more time with their family, whatever it is. You've got to know the language because you're going to be their guide in this process. And if you want to take advantage of this, you have to not sound or appear to be an amateur. So instead, you got to be an expert. That means knowing the area, knowing the trends, knowing the returns, knowing the valuation methods, which is what we're going to go through in the latter part of this class. And then we'll talk a little bit about the finance and options and deal structures here. That's really more complicated stuff. That'll be more version 2 of this class. We can spend just a whole hour on that kind of stuff. So we'll have that in our office meeting. We'll probably get a commercial banker, could even bring another lawyer in to just sort of talk about what that would look like. But we'll scratch the surface a little bit here today on that point. Be a resource. Provide access to your contacts. Literally, you want to be a resource of your knowledge-wise, but also your, the old term Rolodex, your contact list. Build a network of support services that they will need as part of this process. And that's examples there, things like property managers, people who could do some general contractors, lenders, commercial lenders, or residential. There's 2 different ways you can do this thing for clients. Title companies, appraisers, bigger properties, you're going to need environmental engineers, contractors, handyman, plumbers, painters, etc. So literally build that base. And if you don't have it yet, that's okay. That's why you got guys like me as part of your leadership team. You got people like Chris and Kristen. They have a broad, Rolodex or contact list, and they'll make that available to you until you build your own. The other thing, how best to work with investor clients is make it a layup for them, right? There are too many real estate agents out there that will just put them on a search with a bunch of multifamilies in whatever jurisdiction, and they won't analyze for them. What I tell you is people are busy, right? And if you don't serve it up for them in a way that they can digest the information very quickly and make a decision, then they're just going to move on. They're not going to look at it. They're going to be wondering this guy, you gal said he wanted the best, she wanted the best, but they're not taking any action. We got to serve it up easy for them. This is not, in most cases, not their primary thing. With some investors, right? They're going to probably have a couple different people serve them options up. And so you want to be the one that stands out from the crowd. And that's done, practice points here. Don't flood them, just flood them with choices, right? Don't just flood them with hot sheets or searches. Do the homework up front, present only options that make sense for them, right? You're going to ask them, what's your hurdle rate? All that means is hey, what's the rate of return or the opportunity cost loss? What's that return that you need in order to put this money and tie it up? And what's real estate's an illiquid asset, right? And so there needs to be a certain rate of return in order for them to do that. And then like we talked about, every Monday. That was my cadence, is like, send them the MLS sheet, the rental comps, and the spreadsheet, and then watch. If you do it the right way, you watch the calls come in. All right. And then again, we talked about this, make it a layup for you, prepare groups of tags along the interests, geography, price point. We're going to focus more on multifamily here, but you're going to have, like you mentioned already, some people are doing flips and some other stuff. So tag them as well as you can. All right. Multifamily valuation. These are some of the key terms we're going to go through. Now, you'll see in the next slide that I have a spreadsheet. It's the Mama Jama that I created this thing ages ago. I will email it around to the entire Game Changers Philly, New Jersey group after this. And so don't worry about it. You'll have that. You'll have the Rule 72, which I'm going to get into it in a little bit as well, so that you can take action immediately on this process right after this call. All right. So some of the key terms we're going to go through, I'll just read them real quick, and then we'll analyze them. Gross rents, operating expenses, net operating income, cap rate, debt service ratio, cash on cash return, pay down return, the appreciation rate, Rule 72, and then we're going to look at the return over time, not just one static year, but over a 30-year horizon, which is really what gets me juiced, right? Because real estate is about building long-term wealth. You hold it long, and man, you can make a killing on relatively small amount of money out of pocket. So let's dive into it. Hold on. I hear somebody wants to get in. Cool. Can everybody see my spreadsheet? I want to make sure I didn't mess up anything there.
Yes.
All right, good. So a little sweet water in my throat. It's a little dry today. So what we're going to talk about today. All right. So this spreadsheet is the one that has, I'm only showing a little bit of it. There's more below, and there's tabs on the side that we'll get into. What I'm going to walk you through is how to use this spreadsheet, how you explain to use it with your prospective client. And then this is the performer. When I said performer, this is the thing that you're going to send along with your sheets and the rent meter and the MLS sheet and the rent meter, and some sort of like, hey, look, get a 19.7% annual rate of return sort of market and lead in the subject line of your emails or your social media posts, whatever it is. So the first thing I want to tackle with you is what NOI is. Gross rents minus operating expense is NOI, or net operating income. All right. So we talked about how we want to sound like an expert. Again, these fancy terms, if you haven't heard them before, they ain't that fancy. I haven't heard them before, right? That's all it is. Gross rents minus operating expenses equals NOI, or net operating income. And so let's take a look at the spreadsheet. What does it mean? So gross rents is not that complicated. It's what you actually get for rent per month, right? And so in this example, again, this is just a classic example of a duplex somewhere in Springfield, USA, right? 2-bedroom, 1 bath, 3-bedroom, 1 bath, $1,400 a month, $1,600 a month. So the way this spreadsheet works, and there's a lot of different ones. You don't have to use this one, but I'll provide it anyway. So this is going to add them up for the monthly total. And then what it's going to go from here. And by the way, with this spreadsheet, all you have to do is play in the green fields. Oops. Just play in the green fields. That's all you got to do. Don't change anything else because you'll mess up these formulas. Just green. So you're going to fill in the monthly rent. The one you get, it will have 10 slots here. I just, shortened it down for presentation purposes today. But it's going to add up here, the total for the month. And then that's going to move on over here. And that's the annual amount. Now, what I do and what you should do is have a vacancy allowance, right? Even if you're fully occupied, there's going to be, say you get one tenant in, one out, one tenant out, one tenant in. There might be a week or two of turnover where you have to go in there and clean it and paint it. So that you want to model. Now, this is showing a low turnover. This is probably something more like a student housing, or maybe a more suburban market where there's not turnover every single year. That can go a little higher as 5, 8%. And so that's actually, this one probably should be green. I can change that for you guys here on the model. So you can change that up and down depending on what the right asset is or that you're working with. So that's gross rents. Very simple, right? Operating expenses is down here, all this green stuff. Now, what operating expenses is not is the mortgage. That's going to come on over here. And so the fun part's going to be over here, but right now we got to live here. So operating expenses are things like taxes, insurance, repairs, maintenance, or a reserve that the bank might require you to keep in place. Landscape and snow removal, licenses, affiliates, I believe it's $35 per rental unit, I think still. Exterminating, security alarms if you're providing that, utilities, again, you might want to cover water for those jurisdictions that make water lienable against the property. Property management, this stuff again, I'll come back and hit some of the ones that are variable. Property management costs, lease up costs, right? You might want to lease these out for your clients once they buy it. And so there's a lease up cost. Trash and sewer, turnover is something that people don't think about. Like, hey, when you turn over the units, you got to go in there, clean it, you got to maybe paint it. And then miscellaneous, I don't really love miscellaneous categories, but we have it there. One other thing is fire alarm systems. For those that need sprinklers and fire alarms in Philly, you might want to put that instead of other, put that as a line item. Now, things to consider. Operating expenses are going to be pretty easy for you to figure out, right? So don't worry about this. Taxes, you're going to get that from the public records. Insurance, regular duplex that's not super large, in that, 2,000 to 3,000 square foot, that's a pretty good fair estimate. But you can get that by just forming a relationship with an insurance provider and getting a guess on what that could be and then plugging that in. So you get a feel like, once it gets to a certain size, that'll bump it to 3,000, 5,000. You get to a certain number of units, you'll get a sense over time. But in the meantime, just form a relationship with them. You probably already have an insurance provider for your own stuff, right? Go talk to somebody and get a quote on these. Repairs and reserve, again, that could fluctuate depending on the asset that you're working with. If it's a newer construction, brand new rehab, that's probably going to be on the lower side of things. If it's a little bit older, needs more capital improvements, and that number could be higher in that 10, 11% range. What else varies here that I want to talk about? Property management. Again, that's one of those that can vary. They've definitely got property managers that do it on a flat fee basis that can get you down to a number that's like a 4 or 5%. Newer investors that don't have a lot of doors probably won't be able to use the leverage of scale to get it down to 5%. So they might be in that 8, 10, 11, 12% range. And so just be aware that that's possible, that's the range of cost that's potential out there for property management. And then a lot of the lease ups and the turnover. Again, not every unit is going to at least have to be leased up every year. Not every unit is going to be turnover every year. And so you're going to vary that depending on, again, the asset class, whether it's a market that turns over quite a bit or doesn't. Any questions about that? I'll pause for a little bit. Cool. Hearing none, I'll move forward. All right. So what's this cap rate thing? Like if you're new to this, you're like, man, I've heard of the cap rate. I don't know what it is. There's a lot of different ways to sort of go. I'm just going to make it very, very simple. It's a gauge to determine your rate of return on a property, or more properly is to gauge that, single family houses. When you sell single family house, especially in places like Philadelphia, where a lot of them are the same, you can compare it bedrooms to bathrooms, square footage, lot size, that kind of stuff. Multifamily, it's not that easy, right? There's not exactly that same metric. That 4-bedroom doesn't match up with a 2-bedroom, or that quadplex doesn't match up with that duplex. So the way to normalize and sort of compare what a property's worth is like, you're going to just take what the NOI, the net operating income. Remember we talked about that, gross rents minus the operating expenses, divided by the asking price. And then that's going to tell you what the cap rate. So it's going to help you figure out, all right, is it worth it from my investment standpoint, putting my capital play, but it's also going to be a metric they use to compare one property against another to see whether it's worth it, right? It's like your comp. So when people's like, hey, I can't find this comp on MLS, well, you're going to comp investment properties differently. You're going to be using things like cap rates to compare them, or cash flow. One thing to know about cap rates is the lower the cap rate, the more mature the market is. So you're not going to have as high of a yield, but it's going to be safer, typically. Cap rates that are higher or more speculative, higher rate, the higher return, but more risk. And so just keep that in mind. And there'll be certain neighborhoods that will trade at a certain cap rate. So again, these are things that you'll learn over time. Like, well, this market is more of a 7 cap, or this market's more of a 5 cap. Back when I was doing something, I was like, man, that's like a 10 cap, and that was great. That doesn't exist as much anymore. All right, so that's that. And where that's going to show up in the spreadsheet is in 2 places. Right up here, and notice I have it desired cap rate. That's when you're having your consultation, your buyer consultation, for lack of a better term, or your investor consultation. The question you want to ask them is like, what's your hurdle rate? What is your desired rate of return on your capital? Because, capital is limited. I don't care. Some people's capital is more limited than others. But at the end of the day, there is a limit on capital. And again, you're investing in a illiquid asset, right? You can't just turn around and sell this thing and get the cash free. So there is a decision process that needs to go through an investor's mind as like, hey, if I'm going to tie up this money in this illiquid asset, what's the desired cap rate, desired rate of return I require of this money in order to lock it up? And so that's where you're going to plug in that number for that particular client, right? So in this hypothetical situation, we're saying this person's desired cap rate is 7%. What that does for us, remember the comp part I told you about, like how you're going to figure out whether this property is worth what they're asking for, is we've now figured out the NOI. Remember, the gross rents here in this case is $35,460. The operating expenses $8,956. That minus that is over here, NOI $26,504. So this property is going to throw up for debt service $26,504 per annum. What's that in terms of a price, right? And so what this does, it says based off of that NOI, this property is valued at $378,000. Well, they're asking $300 on this one. So that's a great sign, right? Plus, boom, ready. Somebody should be willing to buy this, right? Now, there's some assumptions that you need to test, like the rental, whether you can actually gain this rent once you actually view the property. Is there any deferred maintenance or capital improvements that you need to make? Those are the types of things that you want to test your assumptions, right? You test your assumptions on the rents, test your assumptions on the annual expenses. But assuming all that is in line with your assumptions, then any investor who says that they want a 7% cap rate should be willing to buy this because it's priced at $300,000. So when we talk about the cap rate, it's going to show up here, and it's also going to show up down here, where it's actually priced. It's actually at that NOI at an 8.83% cap rate. Cool. I'm going to pause here again to see if there's any questions on cap rate or the spreadsheet. Anything else?
Yeah, I have a quick question. So for those who are using a form of financing to get to purchase their investment property, what would a lender be looking for in regards to a cap rate?
So the lender is going to be actually looking more at the debt service ratio. So if I could just hold off on that.
Gotcha.
That's this number down here, and I will explain that. That's a really good and important question. I'm just going to ask to hold on to that one. I will definitely hit it before we end this.
Gotcha.
Cool. All right. Any other questions? No. Cool. All right. Moving on.
Yeah,
So
I got a
next,
question. Sorry.
yeah, go ahead, Alan.
Should you recommend put this on your listing?
So I have put it into the document section of
Yep.
MLS so that basically just to make my life easier. So, right. So that agents who have prospective buyers, clients can just analyze the information. They can determine whether they want to go view the property. And I'm not answering the phone call every 5 minutes, repeating the same information over and over. From a marketing standpoint, you might want to just tease the percentage rate, because if the consumer out there has all the information, they may not call you, right? So for those unrepresented consumers, you want them to call you. So you're going to tease some of this information, but I wouldn't necessarily put it out there out and about, because part of it is the marketing side of things. You want to bring them into your mousetrap. But there are the agent remark sections that you can put this information in there for them. There's the PDF section where you can attach stuff like this pro formas. And then the agent remarks say like, hey, see financial information in that section. That way, just from an efficiency standpoint, you've got that part covered and you're not dealing with, really what you want to do is get unrepresented investors to call you. The represented ones, that information can go through their agents. Very good question. Anything else like that? No, and Wes, I think we're going to actually hit that question right away. I lost track of where we were going to go. So multifamily formulas, again, debt service ratio. Exactly. Most banks will be bullish at a 1.20 and above. So what does the debt service ratio mean? It means taking the NOI, again, I'm just going to drill this in your head. It's the gross rents minus the operating expenses, and dividing that by the annual mortgage payment. And that's going to give you a ratio. And the ratio that you want to see is at least what typically is a 1.2 and above. That will signal to the bank that it's a meaty deal, it's a healthy deal, and they'll want to lend on it. And so where does that show up in our spreadsheet? Right here. Now I'll go through this part of it. This is, again, all these formulas are baked in here for you, right? You're just changing the green. To go back, I don't think I said this, desired cap rate, you put whatever that cap rate your client wants and desires. Here's the asking price. Here's the price that you're going to submit. Now, in this scenario, I'll just put $300,000, but you could put something lower in there and that'll just make the return even higher. Now, the loan part of this, remember, the loan is not part of the operating expenses. It's going to show up here. So what I have here is a 7% rate of commission rate. That's what that means here. So you'll change it here. I've gotten quote a couple weeks ago, a quote as low as 6.25. It's creeping up and it's going back and forth. Know that the amortization schedule in a commercial loan is not 30 years. It's typically 25 years. And so that's why this number here is 25 and not 30. If somebody wants to go out, and we're not going to hit this real hard today on the financing part of things, but if somebody wants to go out there and get a residential loan, they couldn't put in a company LLC's name or LP's name. They'll have to hold it in their own personal name, which is something I did. And typically you can do up to 10 of those in your personal name. And then that number, that 25 can go up to 30. And then this right here represents, this 25% represents your down payment. So in a commercial loan, this is all set up for commercial loan, 7%, 25-year amortization, 25% down. If you go a residential loan, and then if you do go residential loan, or you advise them, get a umbrella policy, liability policy to cover the properties and make sure that they're covered, since they won't have the protections of an LLC. But if you go residential loan, again, this rate could probably come down a little bit. This will go to 30, and this can go down to 20. You do FHA, you'll probably get this down to 3.5, which is, again, another strategy that we can get into, but we won't get into it on this call. So for our assumptions, again, we're going to look at the down payment is 25%. So at a $300,000 property, they're going to have to put down $75,000. The amount financed is $225,000. And what you have here is the annual mortgage payment, about $19,000. And then I just kept it here. This is what the monthly payment would be on the mortgage, right? So, and then I have here a closing cost of 3%. You might want to put that to 4%, 3.5%, but that's going to be important a little bit. But now, getting back to your question, Wes, on what's the bank looking for? They're looking at, hey, this number here is what you're going to have to pay me on an annualized basis, $19,000. How's that compare against the money that's cash flowing from this, the NOI? And that's this number, the 26,000. So when you divide that by that number shows up down here, 1.39%. So that's a good, healthy deal, right? And you want that to be healthy for other reasons, because commercial loans, again, I'm jumping ahead into another course on this, but they're also not 30-year fixed. They reset, either a 5-year reset or balloon, or 7 or 10. And so the way you get your clients comfortable with, hey, these different types of terms for commercial loans, is that if it's meaty and it's got a good debt service ratio, then other banks will line up and want to do the loan. If you're going too thin on it and you're below 1.2, then yeah, you're worried about that balloon payment coming up at some point down in the future and people not wanting to lend on it. So that's an important metric. Everybody understand that generally? All right, good. So this is going to be the fun part now. Now we've gotten through all sort of the lead-in. Now we're going to talk about the 3 metrics on how to value a deal that combined should get your clients excited. One of the mistakes I made early in my career, one of the things I want you to take away is that it's not just cash on cash return. And that's cash on cash return is just the net cash flow. That's the gross rents minus the operating expenses minus the debt service, right? It's all the money that's coming in and then minus all the money that's going out. And what we want to do is like, all right, now we figure what that is. Let's go back and look at this. So we know that we've got $26,000, 504 NOI, right? That's gross rents minus expenses. We know we got to pay an annual mortgage amount of $19,000. That leaves us with $7,400 free and clear after we paid expenses and after we paid the mortgage. So that $7,400, what we want to do is quantify that as a percentage of the money that you, the investor, had to put out of pocket to buy that property. And if we go back, remember, what we had to go out of pocket was that $75,000, that's the down payment, plus the $9,000 for closing costs. So a total of $84,000, right? If I did my math right. So for $84,000 out of pocket on the first year, you're going to get $7,400 back. When you take that and divide it by the amount of you out of pocket, that's an 8.83% return on cash flow. Now, if we just look at cash flow, not super exciting, right? I mean, it's good. It's better than what you can get by just parking it in a bank account. But I think a lot of people have been penciling deals and not having them going. In fact, these things could look at 1%, 2%, 3% in some cases and saying, you know what, it's not a good buy. It's not worth it. I'm not going to go forward with this. We're missing the boat if that's the view we take on it, and our clients are missing the boat because it's not just cash flow. It's going to be this one, pay down return, and it's also going to be the appreciation return that combined will get you to double digits. What I want to say about cash flow is you want to advise your clients not to buy anything that's negative return. Okay? You're buying on actuals, not on projected. That's another key term. But also cash flow, like we want it to be positive. We don't want it losing money because a lot of people can get in trouble buying on potential, quote unquote potential. Have a cash flow initially, right? Buy it at a price where it's cash flowing immediately. And that's why the reserve and maintenance reserve here is important, that that's high enough to offset any expenses that come out. Some years you're not going to have any expenses, right? Some years you're going to have smaller ones, some ones you're going to have bigger. What you don't want to do is be funding them out of cash flow. You want to have a big enough number in your repairs, reserves, maintenance to deal with those things that come up in terms of repairing the building. Make sense? And so the first metric, it's cash on cash return. Any questions about that? Nope. All right. Second metric is going to be the pay down principal. So there is a tab. It looks like this. When I send you the spreadsheet, on the second tab, the investment analysis, what we've been going through. The amortization table is basically shows, and don't worry about these dates. It's on a 25-year amortization schedule for a $225,000 loan. What happens is every month that you pay your mortgage, you get your rent from the tenants, you get the cash flow, but they're also taking that money. You're also taking the money that they gave you to pay down your loan. It's not coming out of your pocket. It's coming out of the pocket of the tenants, right? And so if you notice, every month they're paying down the principal, and that gets more as time goes on. So what that means is there's a actual return happening every year, every month when they pay down your loan. And so you want to quantify that for your clients. And in this case, year one, this is a year one static view, right? There are more complicated spreadsheets that will bear this out every single year and project it forward, and then do an IRR return on it. But here, we won't get into that. Here we'll look at, in the first year, the tenants will have paid down about a little less than $3,200 of your principal amount. And again, you want to quantify that as a percentage return for your clients. that amount that they paid off for you on your loan divided by your out-of-pocket costs. Again, that's a $75,000 for your down payment and your $9,000 for your closing cost, $84,000. That's a 3.77% rate of return. So that's your second metric that you want to look at. Third metric is depreciation return, right? And that's just the appreciation, the acquisition price times the rate of appreciation divided by, again, your out-of-pocket costs. Closing costs plus your down payment equals your appreciation return. Now, what I will say about this, and here's a little footnote, this is set in here to help you out and not have to argue about it and actually build credibility with your clients. So the annual appreciation there, and this is actually, I don't believe this has been updated because all these economic indicators but there's an annual appreciation of 4.4% based upon the U.S. Census Bureau and the NAR, meaning from 1970 to 2010, which includes 3 major housing downturns, right? And this does not include the recent uptick that we've had in the last year or two. So literally, you could drop in a appreciation sort of forecast of 4.4% based off of data that you didn't make up. It's rock solid. It's in the books. It's market research that you didn't do. It comes from an expert, right? However, I don't even go that high, right? Because I want to build credibility with my client and use this sort of as a conservative model. I use 2% in our assumption, not 4.4, 2%. And I plug that right in here, 2%. So 2% of the price, 3%, $300,000, that's $6,000 in year one. So again, what you want to look at, how and some people get confused, like, well, Guillermo, how's it, if you're only, putting 2.2%, why are you showing 7% appreciation return? Because it's the $6,000 divided into the out-of-pocket costs. What it costs you out of pocket to buy this property, which again is the $75,000 plus the $9,000 to $84,000. So that, as a fraction or as a percentage, is 7.14%. So this is it. Like now, literally, all this is feed in to literally lead the conversation to here, right? What is your cash flow return? What is your pay down return? What is your appreciation return? And they all add up here, and it's 19.74%. That is beautiful, right? If I could find 20 of these, that's it. That's my year, right? If you can find 5 of these, that's my year. That's what you want to hone in on for your client, because you're going to show them this as well. The Rule 72. And what this is, the rate of return is over here in the left column. The Rule 72 estimate tells you how quickly you will double your money. And so if you're at 17%, and that's really what I target when I'm doing these spreadsheets, I want to see this so that I can turn to my client and say, hey, you're going to double your money every 4 years. I love to get here, right? 20% in less than 4 years, somewhere between, 20, 25 gets you within 3.5 years, you'll be doubling your money. That's gold, right? Who couldn't sell if they're presenting opportunities like this? Who wouldn't have a loyal customer base if you're presenting opportunities like this in this format, right? Digestible for them. Any questions about that? Nope, not here. All right, cool. We'll move forward. So this is the last piece, the return over time. So the cool thing about, all right, so we've got this, right? We're going to hit them over the head like, hey, you're going to double your money every 4 years or every 3.6 years or every 3 years. But the beauty of this is even in the next part, and this is the bottom of the spreadsheet that you'll see when I send it around to you. It's accumulated return, not only in a year one static view, right? You're going to get for $84,000 out of pocket, a $16,500 return in the first year. But let's just look at this thing, year 2, year 3. So right around somewhere between, right around year 4, you're going to get all your initial investment back, assuming, this is a static view. Keep that in mind, right? This assumes that no rents are increasing. The operating expenses are keeping pace with rents. That appreciation isn't way above 2.2%, right? This is a very conservative view. It could be much quicker than this. Could be the opposite too, but more likely, given the history of appreciation, higher than this. But by year 5, a 5-year investment, you're way ahead of this game. And if you are disciplined and your clients are disciplined and look at it beyond just 5 years, 10, 20, 30, this really excites me, right? Because for an $84,000 investment and you hold it for 30 years, that's a $992,000 return for this. And again, this doesn't show any real, like the real appreciation that's probably going to happen in here, right? And increase in rents and that kind of stuff. This is how you get people to take action. Going back here, Rule 72, serving them up, having them show that 19%, e-blasting that thing, put it on social media, put a video together like, hey, I got a property coming on the market, or I just found this property, 30% rate of return, 19% return. Call me right now. I'll get you in there. We'll buy it, right? Look, we'll double your money in 2 or 3 years. And look at what you're going to make in terms of building wealth. What kind of loyalty you build when you have somebody, you're showing them this kind of thing and actually producing this type of thing. Make sense? Any questions about that? Hearing none. All right, good. And we're doing well on time. You know what? I hit some of the stuff already, so I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop here, and I want to make room. Can you guys see me? No more presentation? Good. All right. Q&A. Anything that you guys are burning to ask? Anything not clear? Let me ask you this, Marissa. Would you feel like, this is not going to be perfect. Whenever you learn new things, it's going to be hard to sort of like just do it right initially. But feel something like you can do?
Yeah, and I think, oops, am I echoing on yours? The first investor that I got in contact with when so I've been doing this for a little over a year now, and he was like, well, what's the ARV and what's this and what's that? And I was like, I don't know. So I just had to kind of, try to find information, just use as much data as I possibly could. And so far he hasn't bought an investment property yet. He had a couple offers, but he didn't get them, but we've rented out a couple of his properties that he's already flipped. He called me last week. He wanted to see a property. It was ready under contract, but having a tool like this to send him with already the breakdown will kind of eliminate all of his questions, and just prove to him that, hey, I've already done my research. Here's what you can get. And so I think it'll eliminate a lot of the questions and back and forth. Well, are you sure? And are you sure like this area? And so it will just increase the confidence, I think, on both ends.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's sort of why this method is great, because it builds credibility immediately. When you're presenting information this way, like literally they know exactly, like, oh, this person knows what they're talking about. Like they know the terms, they know the terminology. I recorded this session here, so you'll be able to go back and reference it over and over and over. I'll put it on my YouTube channels, and then I'll circulate amongst the group too, just so that you have it and you can go back and forth and refer to it. Based on what you guys are when I'm hearing from you guys, I can also do, like, I have another spreadsheet that is the builder model. I have another one for Airbnb. I got all kinds of different spreadsheets, right? So investing is my thing. I love this stuff. But yeah, on the ARV, we can do another class just on that, which shows like here's the purchase price, here's the square footage repair costs, and then the ARV is just what it's worth after it's fixed, right? And so typically people, for the risk of doing that, are going to want a 20 to 25% return on their investment. And so that's built into the model in the spreadsheet, where you just plug in, here's the acquisition price, here's the rehab cost, how many units will be repaired, what's the ARV, and then it just spits out the cost. So it'll literally be the same process. If you want to work with flippers, you just do the hot sheets, like here are the properties underneath this price point need to be fixed. You just have to be aware of what the rehab costs are this day and age, with all the inputs sort of having risen and that kind of stuff. But it's going to be the same exact process. And that's also fun. I mean, so if you got somebody who knows it and can bear that risk, that's great. Again, I lean towards this because I want people to be super successful up front, build a little bit of experience, build a little track record, and then they can build towards that type of thing. You could even do a mix of this where they're buying rental properties, rehabbing them, and then you got to talk about the ARV after improved value, right? And then do the cash flow evaluation after it's improved. That's sort of like a hybrid of the two. But it's the same general framework that you're just serving up the information for them in a way that's digestible so that they can take action. And one of the things I didn't talk about, like, hey, what I love about this is because there are great agents out there and that love to show houses. I was not one of them. I didn't care about the granite countertops. I don't care about the color of walls and all that stuff. It just was me. I love numbers, right? And so for me, it was like, hey, we do all the work up front on the spreadsheet. And we only go see properties if they financially make sense, right? And then when we go see the properties, we're only pressure testing our assumptions in our spreadsheet on expenses and income, right? So we're going in there like, can these rentals truly get $1,600 a month? Or do they fudge the numbers a little bit, right? Or is it too small? So is it repeatable? And then on the operating expenses, hey, is this right? Are the utilities separated? Oh no, they're not. Shoot, I didn't account for that. Or man, this roof is almost gone. The heater's almost gone. So there's going to be a lot more capital improvements that we're going to have to put into this thing. But at the end of the day, you're still driving an offer. They should be submitting an offer because it's just a matter of bringing that number from here to here to be in alignment with what the real true fair market value is of that property based off of the cash flow and the NOI. So for me, I love investors because it's like upfront. We're doing the work literally upfront. And then we should be submitting lots of offers and getting lots of properties because it's just a matter of numbers, right? It's not the squishiness that's involved when you're buying your own personal home, right? There's got to be other intangible things that flow into things. Cool. On the last slide that I skipped because I wanted to make sure I had that placeholder. I think best practices is if you want to insulate yourself is to put it into some sort of corporate entity, right? An LLC, an LP. LLCs are very common, so that's probably the easiest one to do. That being said, I think there's a pricing differential that didn't exist a while ago between residential loans and commercial loans. And so if you do decide to, or have clients who want to pursue a residential loan and not put it in a corporate entity, then I think I alluded to it. Go get a big insurance umbrella liability policy to cover yourself. The challenge you have, especially if you're in Philly, like I don't know all the jurisdictions in Jersey, but in Philly, if you put in your individual name and then later want to try and put in a corporate name, you got transfer tax issues, right? And substantial transfer tax issues. It doesn't matter that they're related parties, that you're an individual just transferred to your own company. You will still need to pay the Philadelphia Authority 4 point whatever percent it is these days, right? It's not, you're not splitting it, you're paying the whole caboodle yourself. And that is just cost prohibitive. So sometimes you want to act with the end in mind, and that might be the way to do it. Is just sort of just bite the bullet. You might pay a little bit more in terms of down payment, pay a little bit more in terms of rate, but it'll set you up for the way you want your portfolio running at the end of the day. Cool.
Awesome. Guillermo, I had one question for you, Guillermo, if you have a second.
Yeah.
The person that I have looking for a multifamily, he also wants to occupy one of the units. Does that change the metrics, or would you still run everything the same way?
I mean, so it's funny because I'm going to do an investor seminar in 2 weeks, and that's a great model. Like you can go there and go get an FHA loan. I got to get a commercial lender just to update me on some of the terms on this, but or a residential lender. You can go FHA 3.5%, live in it, season it for a year, and then do it again the next year, right? And so like that's a great thing to do. What you'll do, you still want to pencil it as if you're not living in it, right? So you might do 2 spreadsheets. The first spreadsheet, like, hey, this is what that owner's unit would get if I wasn't living in it. And so it still pencils out at, aggregate return of 17 or 19%. If he or she is living in it, then that's basically just going to subsidize your living expenses. So you just quantify that. Like, hey, I would otherwise be paying $2,000 for my house, my mortgage, and now I'm paying $500. right? And so that could be the go decision for them.
Perfect. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you everyone for participating and being here. If you have any questions, you know how to get me. Text me, call me, email me. I'm happy to talk about this stuff.
Thank
All right,
you.
have a good one. Bye.
Thanks.